Hey YouTube, I'm Kurtis from the Scope of Science, and today I'm back to solve last week's puzzle. See, last week I took some seeds and I put them in a jar with some wet soil and a lit candle, and I sealed the jar. Now, I expected that those seeds wouldn't germinate, and I expected that because I know that candles use oxygen in their reaction when they burn, and seeds need oxygen to germinate, so I expected that they wouldn't grow. And I was wrong. They did grow. And so that's a big shock to me. I did some research and did some reading, and I also asked you guys to say, hey, what do you think happened? And you guys came back with a lot of answers. So if you haven't seen the video from last week, there's much more detail about it. I'll put the card linked somewhere here, so check that out. Now, I got a lot of great comments from folks on the internet about how this could have happened. Some people thought that there was something producing oxygen in the jar, or that it was something to do with the seeds, that maybe they didn't need oxygen, or that there was oxygen in the soil. And there actually definitely was some oxygen in the soil, but there was a much bigger flaw in my experiment that only a couple people realized. And that is that the air in the jar still had lots of oxygen in it. Now here's why. A candle, as it burns, uses up oxygen and produces carbon dioxide, CO2, but it doesn't use up all of the oxygen. Turns out I know a lot about seeds, but very little about candles. So the air was probably still about 10% oxygen when we did this experiment, and that's no problem for seeds. I have a way of actually showing this. It's kind of neat. So here's what I did. I took 2 candles and I put them in a sealed jar after I lit them. And I put them at slightly different heights. Now, you would expect that if a candle could use up all the oxygen in the jar before it burnt out, that they would both go out at the same time. But since they don't use all the oxygen in the jar, since they need a fair bit of oxygen to burn, and once it passes a threshold, they can no longer burn even though there's still oxygen. Well, the candles go out at different times. It's a simple way of demonstrating that there is still oxygen in the jar, and that in my first experiment, where I only had 1 candle, there was still oxygen left after that candle burnt out. That's the solution from last week. It turns out that science is tricky. It's not always as simple as we think. It's not always our first instinct that is the correct answer. And sometimes that only shows through in experimentation. For example, when I did the experiment with 2 candles, I expected that the one up top would burn out first. Here's why. Now, the upper candle, well, I thought that since oxygen is lighter than CO2, so it's just O2 versus CO2, I thought that the O2 would be up at the top of the jar. Since it's already in the jar, my jar, now I thought that the candle up top would have more O2 because there would be more oxygen available up here. Because oxygen is lighter than carbon dioxide. That extra carbon I thought would be weighing it down. But what's kind of exciting is that I was totally wrong. And in science, we sometimes celebrate being wrong. Now, what was actually happening is that the CO2, even though it was being produced by this candle, well, it's hot. And hot stuff is spread out further. So the atoms, or the molecules in this case, are spread out further when they're hot. So they rise up above this oxygen. So there's actually more carbon dioxide up here and more oxygen down here. And now what that means is that this candle up here ran out of oxygen before this one did. So it's kind of a fun way of experimenting to show how candles use up oxygen and how heat rises and everything. But it's also kind of cool because it's an experiment within an experiment, and I had 2 surprises, 1 for each of them. So that's it for this week. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, you could actually like this video. As I'm doing experiments with the science stuff, I'm also experimenting on this channel, so giving me some feedback would be great. I'm actually trying this new whiteboard thing. I didn't use it a whole lot in this video, but I think I'll probably be using it more in the future. If you like it, if you find it distracting, whichever, let me know. I'd appreciate the feedback. And I'm going to be doing many more videos about terrariums, so if you're into that, you can subscribe, and thanks so much for watching.